With that, let me give you our speaker, introduce our speaker today. I've known Richard Gentry for a number of years. We've spoken at conferences across the country from time to time at the same one, and he's got over 30 years experience working with government, private agencies. He owns his own consulting firm, Richard Gentry Strategic Interventions. He's from Michigan. He has a bachelor's degree from Michigan State University and a master's degree from Spring Arbor University, and his emphasis is on cognitive behavioral intervention programs. So with that, Mr. Gentry, it's yours.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone, whether it's 3 o'clock where you are, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, noon. I want to greet you. I'm coming from the great state of Michigan, and I want to thank Dr. Mel Brown for the opportunity to allow me to share on what I feel is a very important topic in today's workforce. And so we want to talk about successfully working with a multi-generational workforce. And so this is one of the things with all of the diversity that we focus on. Sometimes this issue of diversity in regards to the generations tend to be overlooked. So we want to be able to shed some light and hopefully we can better help you to work with people who may come from different age groups, or different backgrounds and settings as it relates to the generation that researchers have assigned them to. My information, hopefully you can see that, is on the screen right now. And I would like for you to be able to visit my website, which is www.rgstrategicinterventions.com. It gives you some information on who I am and some of the services I provide. I also have a YouTube station. You'll find video clips and some of the presentations I've done in the past. One of the things that I'm excited about as it relates to my website and the YouTube channel is learning modules, and we'll be coming to you monthly with what we call learning bites. Learning modules are anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. In this day and age, that's a little bit of a challenge for people to set aside that much time in this busy world to be able to listen to some of the modules. So we are moving to learning bites, which are 2 to 3 minute segments, just quick hitters, giving you pieces of information in regards to best practices and working with people, whether it's juveniles or adults, in the human services field. And so some of the modules include social learning theory. I have 2 parts on the social learning theory that we present on, neuroscience of poverty, which is a new and emerging discipline, 2 parts there, the behavior formula, 4 reasons why youth misbehave, principles of discipline, establishing healthy relationships, the ACE studies, adverse childhood experiences, or the ACE study, and teaching responsibility. In the near future, we are looking at creating podcasts, which I call Strategic Champions, where we will have movers and shakers in the field come to you. They will tell their story and they will share on their expertise in the field, whether it's corrections, juvenile justice, child welfare, education, and there will be some other people. And so we're looking at these segments being somewhere around 1 hour in duration. So we think that that will be a real treat, and you'll be able to find that on my YouTube channel as well. And also, this is new, and I'm excited about the medical corner that we will be introducing to people. This medical corner will focus on youth in regards to keeping them healthy, in regards to eating and appointments and primary care, and those kind of things that many of them may have missed out on because of their socio-economic status. So there will be articles coming forth in the near future for medical professionals, and that would be a treat to be able to read those articles and get some information in regards to uh, the emerging practices in the medical industry as it relates to young people. So let's move forward. One of the things that I want to do is I'm going to introduce the various generations in the workplace to you, give you some information concerning those generations, some attributes, some things that, some commonalities with the generations, what make them unique and what makes them different. And so as we go to each generation, I'm going to ask you in the chat room, if you don't mind documenting some of, if you have any stereotypes or impressions about the particular generation, I would like you to jot down a sentence or two, and hopefully we'll have a chance to refer to those and talk about that a little bit. So as we go through the various generations, that will be your opportunity to participate in regards to your thoughts about that generation, and we'll be able to discuss that. So you're looking at on the screen one of my favorite sitcoms back in the early 70s. So I'm already dating myself on the front end of Generation X, the back end of the baby boomers. But All in the Family was one of my favorite sitcoms. I think it'd be pretty controversial in this day and age to run these particular comic shows here with All in the Family. But what you find in this sitcom is that you find a distinct difference between two generations. The silent generation, or the greatest generation, and we'll talk about that shortly, and then the millennials, or Generation Y. So if you're familiar with the theme song of All in the Family, it goes something like this. This is Norman Lear's production. And it begins by saying, from Television City in Hollywood. And you find Archie Bunker, that's Carol O'Connor, and Edith Bunker, that's their roles, who was actually Gene Stapleton, singing at the piano. And so they each are taking different parts to this song, which goes like this. Boy, the way Glenn Miller played songs that made the hit parade. Guys like us, we had it made. Those were the days. And you knew who you were then. Girls were girls and men were men. Mister, we can use a man like Herbert Hoover again. Didn't need no welfare state. Everybody pulled his weight. G.R.O. LaSalle ran Gray. Those were the days. So this song alone gives a lot of information and background on the greatest generation, or the silent generation. Now, these guys are, for the most part, in their 80s and older, and they're known as the greatest generation because if they had not stepped up, this is Archie Bunker's generation, if they had not stepped up like they did, the world would be a very different place today. These are very resilient individuals because they were born and endured the greatest or the most difficult time in our history, the Great Depression of 1929, lasted 1929 to 1933. And so as you interview people in this greatest generation, and I'll use that interchangeably with the builders or the silent generation, but the greatest generation, I'll use that primarily talking about this generation. They were people who experienced hardship. They endured hardship. They endured going through a difficult period of time. And from the difficult period of time, they entered into World War II. However, they were not complainers. They were builders. They had to build their lives basically from nothing. Many of these people lost almost everything after the stock market crashed in October of 1929. People began to panic and run to the banks to withdraw their money. The banks folded and closed, and a lot of these people simply lost everything. So this generation has been interviewed by researchers, and many of them state, we didn't know that times were so bad. We just knew that, there was a struggle and we had to make things work. But for the most part, we were happy because everyone that we knew went through these difficult times. And so in this song that Archie and Edith were singing, they're reminiscing on a difficult period. Hit to them, it was glory days. They talk about the hit parade, this show that they watched that would have the greatest of entertainers. You had to be special to make the hit parade. I'll put it that way. Glenn Miller was this great orchestra. He was able to orchestrate great bands. He was a war hero. They talked about Herbert Hoover. They had great respect for their politicians. Herbert Hoover led them through the Great Depression, and they say, boy, we could use a man like Herbert Hoover again. They talked about no need for a welfare state during these days. They endured these hard times without government assistance. Talked about everybody pulling their weight. Talked about their old LaSalle, this car that they drove. That car was an amazing car. GRO LaSalle ran great, didn't need a lot of repairs. It was good to us. We had one car. We made things work. The issue with All in the Family, and this was a major theme of this sitcom, was that their son-in-law, his name was Michael. Archie called him Meathead affectionately. He was married to their daughter, Gloria. He was in graduate school. He didn't have a job. He moved into his in-laws' home, and there was major conflict between Archie and Michael. This depicts this Grace generation, hard workers, appreciated everything, very patriotic, a great respect for authority, clashing with Michael, or the person known affectionately, the nickname that Archie gave him, Meathead. He was a baby boomer, and they had very different outlook on things. Very, very different outlook on things. And so what made the show was that their conflict, their back and forward, their bantering, not really understanding each other, not willing to work out their differences. And so I'm not going to focus from this point on the silent generation or the greatest generation, because for the most part, they're not in the workforce now. But I did want to say a word or two about that particular generation, because researchers talk about 5 generations being in the workplace, but for the most part, we see 4 generations in the workplace. And these are the guys that I want to talk about. And so these 4 generations are the baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, or the Millennials, and Generation Z. What kind of qualities are unique? What kind of things make them different from the previous generations, some of the challenges that they encounter, and how best we can work with the various generations and understand the generations. Now, I'll begin by saying this. We need to understand that shared experiences causes groups to think alike. I'll say that again. Shared experiences cause various groups to think alike. And so because of these experiences, for instance, I'll give you an example. The Great Recession in 2008. These people who have gone through that, especially those who are entering the workforce, may think different from those who have encountered the pandemic that we're dealing with in 2020. In 2008, these people entering the workforce would have a great value on maybe a 9 to 5, the stability of coming to a job, going into the office, but stability and having an anchor in regards to work would be important to them. that type of security is something that they would cherish. It's because of a shared experience they've had with that economic downturn. Now, let's compare that to, say, those who entered the workforce during the great pandemic of 2020. Many of them entering the workforce found themselves working remote, working from home, uh, being able to get a lot done, not at the office. So that's one of the things moving on from the pandemic that they would value, that they realize that they can get things done, not necessarily at the office, but they could get a lot of things done at home. So again, it's these shared experiences. We'll talk about some of the experiences the various generations have endured to make them unique. Neuroscientists talk about this concept called plasticity, and it deals with the brain, the ability of the brain to be able to change. So there's something to this saying that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I think all of us have heard that before. Basically, younger people are able to absorb a lot of information. Their experiences create neural networks or neural pathways. These experiences tend to solidify within their brain, these experiences. And if you can think of a particular place and time in history, people are experiencing the same type of events, not only situations from their family, but I'm talking about whether it's a global event or an event in their region. It tends to bring them together or cause some similarities in some sort of way. And therefore, these various generations are solidified based on common experiences that they have endured. And so that's one of the things we want to look at, because these shared experiences really determines to a great extent who they are as the years pass by. So one group have experienced certain things that a group coming along after them may not have experienced. Their experiences may have been quite a bit different, and they are quite a bit different. Thus, researchers can identify the various generations amongst human beings. Baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, and Generation Z. So we'll take a closer look at these particular generations as we go. Now, back in the day, almost in the Stone Ages, I was a college athlete, and there's my alma mater that you see there, Michigan State University. And some of you may be familiar with this process called NIL. Anyone familiar with that? Stands for name, image, and likeness. There had been a great debate for decades as to whether or not college athletes should be paid for their services or paid for their likeness, paid for their image, that they should be able to monetize their brand. So this debate has been brewing for a very long time. And based on the various generations of people involved with NCAA activities and sports, we find that those opinions actually begin to form along these generational lines. I'll give you an example of how people thought as it came to this issue of college players monetizing their brand. Baby boomers, for instance. Most of the baby boomers were administrators with the NCAA, National Collegiate Athletic Association. They were administrators. They were pretty much in charge of things. These athletic administrators were not in favor of college athletes benefiting from their brand, making money from their brand. Almost across the board, the boomers were not in favor of this. Let's look at the Generation Xers. The Generation Xers mostly comprised of head coaches. These head coaches tend to side with decided with the baby boomers or the administrators. They didn't think that that would be a good idea for college athletes to make money because they felt that somehow, in some way, it would compromise the college sport, that it would make it impure, that it wouldn't be the same as before and would jeopardize the integrity of college sports. So they tend to side with the baby boomers. Uh, how about the millennials? The millennials, they were mostly assistant coaches. They were able to identify with the players. Many of them, maybe just a few years removed from being players themselves, maybe they had some of the same concern that the current college athletes had. And so the millennials, they sided with the college athletes. Now, Generation Z comprised of all of the college athletes. And you may be familiar with some of the names of these guys: Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, the NCAA women's basketball. So they were able to really profit from their brand, from their name. Bronny James, University of Southern California; Caleb Williams, USC quarterback, Heisman Trophy winner; Shakir Sanders, that great story coming from the University of Colorado with Deion Sanders. That's just a few. These guys are actually millionaires and they're Generation Z guys, but they have greatly benefited from marketing their brand in college sports. But you see, right along generational lines, the opinions vary. Boomers held tight to their opinions and beliefs. Generation Xers uh, held fast to their beliefs. Millennials held fast to their beliefs. And Generation Z held fast to their beliefs. What I would like for you to do is I have the first group, or the first of the generations we're going to talk about on the screen right now. You'll see the age range from 59 to 77 years old. You know some of them. I don't think we have any on this presentation. About 76 million of the baby boomers. So let's talk about them. There's some of the pictures here. Some of the faces are very familiar that you recognize. But what I would like for you to do in chat is just take a moment to document any of your, if there's stereotypes or your thoughts when you hear the word or the term baby boomers, what comes to mind. So we'll give you a quick opportunity to do that. So the baby boomers, this is a generation after Archie Bunker and Edith Bunker's generation. They are the children of the silent generation, or the builders. These guys really came into their own after World War II. The world was just really threw in disarray with the greatest war the world has ever known. And after the war, people are putting their lives back together. So this is the onset of the baby boomers, a return to normalcy, getting married, having a mortgage, picket fence and children, maybe a dog, and living a normal life. So there was a great expansion because there was a focus on family. There was a focus on normalcy with the baby boomers. So as we move forward, I just want you to put some of your thoughts in the chat. So this is a challenge for some of us, and I know for some that are older than I am, and like I say, I'm at the bottom end of the boomers and Generation X. I'm right along that border, but really make reservations online.
You've got some comments in the chat room if you want to look at them.
Yeah, let's look at some of your comments, guys. Thank you, Dr. Mel. So Generation X is the best. That might be a Generation Xer there. Negative ghostwriter. And baby boomers, hard workers, resourceful, and frugal. Yes, hardworking and big on family. So yes, we want to talk a little bit about that. And if somebody has a comment, maybe you can raise your hand. We'll recognize that. We'll give you an opportunity to go into that a little bit further. But these guys aren't familiar with computers that much. They have their 9-year-old grandchildren teaching them, what a USB drive is and how to turn the computer on and and all of this kind of stuff. So they show up to the restaurant and you have reservations. Does it look like we made reservations? Really? So let's talk a little bit more about these guys, some of the characteristics, some of the qualities that these guys have experienced. So these are the children of the greatest or the silent generation, as we talked about. This is the second largest of the generations, the largest at that time. Uh, they've come, they haven't experienced the Great Depression. They're at a time where there's peace. There's a period of prosperity, and the baby boomers are taking advantage of these kind of things. High expectations after World War II. One of the things that's unique and significant about the boomers is that they experienced a lot of significant events in their lifetime. Race riots in the US cities, the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X. They experienced the first man on the moon. That was 1969. The Vietnam War was a major thing. And then the free sex and drug movement. I could have also put the Watergate crisis in there, but there was a lot of things that occurred with the boomers that caused them to begin to feel resentful. They experienced a lot of things that maybe leadership isn't all what they're cracked up to be. So these are some things that molded the boomers. Keep in mind that shared experiences cause groups to think alike. Now, with that being said, there are certain things that, let's see here. There's certain things that we like to focus on. And I'm going to get my screen. Here we go. How best to work with the boomers? We want to recognize their experiences and expectations. Now, one of the things that I have observed personally is that you find a lot of the boomers who are still in the workplace, they're pretty burned out. They're pretty frustrated. They feel that things have passed them up, things have passed them by. A lot of them are resentful to a degree, unfortunately. And that's because they feel that, look, I have a lot of experience, I have a lot of talent, but it's not being utilized. And furthermore, these younger generations are not listening to me. I tried to help them, and this is the testimony of quite a few that I've talked to. They don't understand. They don't respect our experience. They don't respect our age. They don't respect tradition. And so how best to work with this, knowing this information, how best to work with them. Recognize their experience and expectations. Put them in positions where they can share their past roles and their successes. We have to show appreciation for the things that they've done, the things they have accomplished, and what they have to offer. Is it possible to put them in positions where they can take charge of projects and so forth and mentor people? Have them be coaches, remind them of their younger years when they struggle, when they become impatient with the generations behind them. And I have this opportunity to coach and talk to different people, including boomers, and I hear them express their frustration with the generations coming behind them. They don't respect the workplace. They don't respect hard work. They don't respect experience. They don't respect a lot of these things. So these are just some things that we can consider when we're working with baby boomers. So the issue is understanding what their issues are. Keep it in mind, because the purpose of this webinar is not for you as participants to stereotype these generations, but to gain a better understanding as to how to work with these groups. So gathering information should not cause us to stereotype this group, but as we gain information, it will give us more insight as to what their issues are and how we can better connect with them and work with them so they can experience success on the job. Let's talk a little bit about Generation X, 42 to 58 years old, 47 million of them. There's a few faces up there that you may recognize, and a few points here. Individualistic, skeptical, technology, adapt, flexible, and they have balance. So take a minute in chat to write down some of your thoughts as it comes to Generation X, this particular group. And interestingly enough, I just want to say this, that, as I'm doing research on this, and I've been studying this stuff for a bit now, they say the greatest conflict as it relates to the generations occur with the boomers and the millennials. So we'll talk about that a little bit further. But write down your thoughts on Generation X if you have any, if you have experienced stereotypes, or if you have any thoughts about this group of people born 1965 to 1980. And we'll be able to look at that in just a bit. So let's get into this a little bit further. I don't know if you guys have experienced this bumper sticker before, but this bumper stick was very prevalent in the recent past amongst a lot of those coming from Generation X. And as we get into this further, this generation is a very skeptical generation. It's a smaller generation, much smaller than the boomers. They've had different issues to overcome, and they've had different challenges during the era as they were growing up. But this question of authority was a big issue. Why? Because we previously talked about some of the issues that happened during the era of the boomers. Many of those in Generation X felt let down by leadership because of some of the things that we previously talked about. A lot of it centered around the Vietnam War. A lot of the pop culture, the songs, a lot of the protests centered directly around the Vietnam War. So this question of authority was a big thing. And so with the Generation Xers, we should understand that they're not going to take your word at face value. Because of their shared experiences, they tend to question a lot of things. Here's some other occurrences or events that came to the forefront with Generation X. The onset of contraception and abortions, which reduced the population. Some of you may be familiar with the term latchkey generation. There was a high rate of divorce during this time. So smaller generation, high rate of divorce would have an impact on this generation. But also, because of the high rate of divorce, we find many females entering the workplace, which causes those who are growing up to have to look out for themselves. They're at home after school, thus they're the latchkey generations. They had to figure things out. The question authority thing that we talked about, the assassinations, the riots, how Vietnam was mishandled, the Watergate crisis, all of these kind of things, the racism, segregation, Jim Crow, black codes, all of these kind of things really brought that generation of boomers into question with Generation X. So they were a very skeptical group. They grew up during the Cultural War. They grew up during the time of the Cold War. They experienced the fall of the Soviet Union, the crumbling of the Berlin Wall. These people are self-reliant because they had to figure things out, because their parent, mom in this case, in a high rate of divorce, many of them found themselves kind of raising themselves. So these are some of the shared experiences that Generation X experienced, and it has caused them to respond in the workplace in a certain way. And so let's talk about that a little bit in regards to how should we connect or best connect with Generation X. One of the things that we want to do is we want to listen and communicate understanding and build a genuine relationship, because they see BS 50 miles away. They've seen a lot. They've experienced a lot. We need to be brutally honest with them. They don't want things sugar coated. They have experienced a lot of things. So let's not blow smoke at Generation X. They understand that life is tough, and we shouldn't pretend that life isn't. Generation X has come to the conclusion that life is unfair, that bad things happen in life. They recognize that, they understand it. So don't tell them that life is a bed of roses in the workplace or wherever, because they've seen things differently based on their shared experiences. Allow them to lead. They have a great degree of experience themselves. Keep boundaries minimal and be very clear with them. Role clarity is very important. They need to understand what it is they are expected to do, step back, and allow them to do the work. They can be influenced through relationships and not your position. They don't care about your position because, again, authority should be questioned. I want you to think about that. And so on the job, just because you are a supervisor or you have a fancy title, they're actually looking at how authentic you are. Do you care about them? Are you able to build relationships? Are you authentic? Are you sincere? Are you a stand-up person? Are you able to look people in the eye and give them the 411 unadulterated? For Generation X, these things are very, very important to them. So we want to keep that in mind when we're dealing with this generation. Now, if you have any other thoughts on that, you're always welcome to drop those off. Okay, we have some comments, right? Let's see. Our big family. We were pushed to be hard workers. And I believe we're referring to Generation X, suburban living, the new hardest working group, free range children, very focused. These are some of the thoughts. And if you do have a comment, we're open to you making that comment. We just have to, see that little hand, and we have to acknowledge that. So thank you for those comments as it relates to Generation X. So there's a difference with the boomers and X. There is a distrust to some degree. These experiences has caused them not to accept things at face value. You have to explain things to them, but not only explain things to them to make it simple, or as some people say, to make it make sense. You have to show them that your way is the right way, because they're not on board just because you have a fancy title. Let's talk about these guys, these millennials here. They're 23, 41 years old. This is the largest of the generations. This is the largest of the generations here, of the millennials. Millennials are also known as Generation Y. Of course, Generation X, we just talked about. Millennials, Generation Y. And then shortly after, we'll talk about Generation Z. I had a director. He was a baby boomer, and he worked with a lot of millennials. And so the millennials, if they needed something from the director, and this was in a college setting, I served as an adjunct faculty, adjunct instructor, they would email him. And if he was in the building, he would always walk down to our office or their office, and he would sit down and have a chat. He never emailed back. For millennials, they see that as a pretty convenient way of communicating with the onset of emails. But for a lot of the older generation, they would prefer to have face-to-face conversation. So he would spend a lot of time, if he was needed, that he would go to the various offices, and he would sit with the employees, he would sit with the instructors, and he'd work out the situations face to face. Now, there's no right or wrong way. The issue is the job being done? Are issues being resolved? Are things being solved? I had a friend who was an instructor, He was frustrated with his children because he would call them on the phone and they would never pick up the phone. They would never answer the phone. And so he was always bothered by that. But then if he would text them, they would respond immediately. And so he couldn't figure that part out. And so a lot of these people with older generations, as I mentioned, the boomers tend to struggle greatly with the millennials. I had a situation. I'm actually an embedded staff in New York City. I'm serving as a consultant in two of the detention centers. One is in Brooklyn, the other is in South Bronx. And part of my role is to be involved in training this behavior management curriculum and get people up to speed as we put this new behavior management modality in place. Um, part of part of our job was to train certain sharp individuals within the facilities to be called what we recognize as champions, and they would assist us with the training. Some of them did a wonderful job with that, and it's a great concept. Uh, One of the guys that I trained and he worked with me a lot and did a good job, and he was right on the cusp of being a baby boomer and a Generation Xer. And so a lot of the people that we trained, they were millennials. And so he was very frustrated with his generation. I didn't know it. And so in his training, a lot of his frustrations would come out. And he would change the entire environment because he would just spend time getting on the millennials' case about what they won't do, how they're ill prepared for work, how he totally don't get them and don't understand them. And they just need to shut up and listen because they have no experience and basically they have little to offer. And that sometimes he was just that blunt. And it really put a damper on training. And we really had a lot of repairing to do and a lot of work to do with this individual. Say, yeah, we understand and acknowledge your feelings, but these are people that we need. And these are people that we need to train and bring them up to speed in doing a quality job. And so this is the complaint from a lot of the baby boomers and Generation Xers as it relates to millennials. Now, the millennials is another unique group of people. And my guess is that some of you who are online listening might be a part of this unique generation, wonderful generation. 23 to 41 years old. These numbers vary a bit based on the researchers or the person that's doing the research, but is universally acknowledged that this is the largest generation, 80 million individuals. And so let's talk about some of the things that they have experienced and some of the ways that we can some of the ways that we can connect with these guys. I would like for you just to jot down a few things in chat. What comes to mind when you think of millennials? This is a generation where everyone gets a trophy. You guys are familiar with that? Generation of student loan debt. You have reached $1 trillion in student loan debt. So it's a matter of understanding, right? From one generation to the next. Some people say your pants are too low. Others say your pants are too high. Something to think about there. It's a generation gap. And so how do we close that generation gap in the workplace? Some of you are familiar with the Fab Five, University of Michigan. The Fab Five is known as the greatest recruiting class of freshmen in the college basketball ranks. This class came into the University of Michigan, I believe it was right around 1991. This was just five awesome athletes. They did something that no other college basketball team or college sports have done. But these five freshmen were able to ascend to the ranks of the national championship in college basketball. There were five freshmen: Chris Webber, Jalen Rose, Juwan Howard, Jimmy King, and Ray Jackson. Very unique and talented group of individuals. These guys were millennials. And what made these guys unique, what made these guys different, because not only were they super talented, but they also experienced a tremendous amount of criticism based on cultural norms and really changing the game as it related to their appearance on the basketball court. During this time, Steve Fisher was the basketball coach of the University of Michigan. Steve Fisher happened to be a baby boomer. And now he's dealing with these 5 freshmen, incredibly talented, coming from various inner cities in the country, coming together to play basketball at the University of Michigan. As you notice, they brought in the baggy shorts. Prior to this group of athletes, most of the, if not all of the college basketball players were those hip huggers, those little tight shorts all the way up to their butt. But it was Jalen Rose that wanted the big shorts initially, and he was able to do that, and the others followed suit. But not only that, they began to make the, shorts bigger, And so part of the criticism was that these guys were thugs, they were hoodlums, they were criminals, they were gangsters. Steve Fisher, who was a baby boomer from the white upper middle class, coaching these guys. He wanted success. So his challenge was how best to connect with this group. So he was able to understand them to a degree. He was able to learn from them. He was able to connect with them. They had a tremendous amount of respect for him, and they played very hard for him. So with that being said, this issue of understanding, asking questions, coming together, the things that you don't understand, get clarity on, the things that you do, or things that we're not asking you to change your identity of who you are. But what we're asking, especially in the workplace, is that if we're going to understand those who are different from us, we have to come together. We have to ask questions. We have to allow people to speak. We have to have them be able to share their perspective. So these are the millennials right here. And this is a great story of the head coach being able to connect with these young men, 18 and 19 years old, who did some great things. And let me tell you, there was all kind of racist comments coming from all different directions at these guys. There was a lot of condescending remarks about these guys, a lot of misrepresentation concerning these guys. But it was Steve Fisher, the coach at that time, who was able to bring these young men together, to be able to work with them, to gain an understanding, for them to educate him. So as opposed to resisting them based on, the length of their shorts, and the way they dress, the black socks, the black shoes, and all of that, that was a new concept. He was able to work with them. He was able to compromise and allow them to identify themselves or represent themselves in a way that they were comfortable, yet at the same time achieving the big goal, which is going to the national championship and winning college basketball games. So this was a powerful story right here that I thought I'd share, that with differences, no matter how insurmountable they may be in the workplace, and there's lots of differences in the workplace, we see it all the time. And a lot of it is based on stereotypes. A lot of it is just based on simple prejudice. Everybody isn't exactly alike. And so we have to understand those different dynamics. Here's a video that I love. Some of you may have seen this movie. This is a trailer from the movie The Intern. And some of you may know Robert De Niro, great actor. He played a senior named Ben Whitaker, went back to the workforce after he retired, after his wife died. He's a 70-year-old. They will call him a senior intern. He went to this internet fashion company where Jules Austin was the founder and she was the boss. Jules was a millennial. And Jules initially didn't want anything to do with a 70-year-old intern that was assigned to work with her. She fought it really hard. Jules was a person that was really driven. She made this internet company, this fashion company, into a multi-million-dollar company based on her own ingenuity. But I'm going to show this trailer, and it just talks about some of the dynamics, which I would encourage you to watch the movie because it really depicts the differences between generations and how they could be brought together in a way based on mutual understanding and respect and these things that we know is important when it comes to understanding each other and building healthy relationships.
Okay, Benjamin, I'm gonna ask you one of our more telling questions for all of our interns, so I want you to, this is the one to really think about, okay? Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
When I'm 80.
And I love myself. The world is a ghetto with guns. Remember a few weeks ago we talked about the senior intern program?
Seniors in high school or college?
No. Seniors in life.
Hold on. What?
That's our founder and CEO, Jules Austin.
Any tips before I go in?
Blink.
Blink.
She hates when people don't blink. It weirds her out.
Hi, Jules. I'm Ben, your new intern.
I'm glad you also see the humor in this.
Be hard not to.
I will email you when I have something for you to do.
I'll wait to hear from you, sir. I'm terribly sorry. Excuse me.
So you're Jules' new driver?
No, actually, I'm her intern.
That's hysterical.
My intern sure keeps busy.
Mr. Congeniality. Everybody loves him.
You should dress to impress. Tuck in the shirt. Why doesn't anybody tuck anything in anymore? Oh, I'm asking you.
I'm Fiona, the house masseuse.
Ben.
How's that been?
Well, so that's oh boy.
Here you go.
You're not as old as I thought you were.
So you're on Facebook, huh?
I joined about 10 minutes ago.
Well, better late than never. All right, so there are all these questions for your profile that you can answer if you want to, like people who inspire you.
Jules Austin. You do inspire, Jules.
Our investors just think that a seasoned CEO could take some things off your plate.
I mean, get me CEO lessons.
I never had anything like this in my life. This big, beautiful, exciting thing that you created. Remember who did that?
Oh.
Good times.
It's moments like this when you need someone you know you can count on. Because you're my...
Intern.
Well, I was gonna say intern / best friend. Look and learn, boys, because this is what cool is. How in one generation have men gone from guys like Jack Nicholson and Harrison Ford to...
Oh, boy.
So this is one of those feel-good movies that I think that you'll enjoy when it comes to discussing the differences in the workplace. And this movie right here really depicts it quite well, where you had a millennial that was so driven and hardworking, and the company was kind of getting away from her because it was growing so fast. And although she was very bright and driven, she didn't, she could use the advice of a CEO or someone who was experienced, because actually Ben Whitaker, Robert De Niro, he had 40 years of managerial experience. Different environment, but some of the concepts, were very beneficial to help Jules as things were just kind of getting away from her because it was growing so big in regards to organizing and delegating and a lot of things like that that she desperately needed. So these guys were able to work out their differences basically because of the wit, the charm, the wisdom, the sense of humor that Ben Whitaker displayed. Very patient. He wasn't pushy. He wasn't a know-it-all, but he got in where he fit in. There's a term, get in where you fit in. Is exactly what he did. And his approach eventually won Jules, the owner and the founder, over. Really won her over where she depended on him. But not only did she depend on him and respect him at the workplace, but they became very close friends, where he was actually able to help her in her own personal life and personal affairs. So these things can happen if we take the time to understand those that are different from us in the workforce, those who might be older, those who may be younger, those who may think different. The bottom line is coming to the table and having those discussions and appreciating people for who they are. So right now we're approaching, in Eastern time zone, we are approaching 4 o'clock, I think, Central time zone, 3 o'clock. I'm not exactly sure where others are at, but we thought that it would be appropriate and good to give you guys a short break, intermission. Just promise us that you'll come back because we have some more good information to share with you guys in regards to millennials and Generation Z, where we're putting a lot of time and effort into earning the newest generation that's coming into the workforce, Generation Z. They are very unique of individuals that we're doing a lot of research. So I'm interested in hearing you guys' stories on some of this. If you have that opportunity to, to do that, again, Dr. Mel is helping me. We'll try to get your attention, and then you'll be able to unmute yourself and talk about any of your experiences up to now as it relates to some of the generations. Maybe some of the things that you guys have done that you found success with. Maybe some other challenges that you guys are experiencing. We'll take a moment to talk about that. So why don't you come back? Dr. Mel, can we just do 10 minutes? I think we have time to do
5,
that.
10, whatever you want.
Yeah, so let's do this. Let's come back for those of you, if you're in the Eastern time zone, 4:10. For those of you in the Central time zone, how about 3:10? And I don't know if we have any others further west than that. But let's take a 10-minute break, and according to Eastern time zone, we will get started at 4:10. Okay. So we'll see you in about 10 minutes. Okay, guys, I think we're just about at that time where we can get back started. Hopefully you had a good break and everybody is doing well and a little bit refreshed. We left off at millennials, and we want to get involved in some similarities, some characteristics, some of the things they have experienced. Again, millennials also are known as Generation Y. And so if you look at the screen, there's some dynamics here. The largest of all of the generations. It's important to note that, the researchers who have studied the millennials feel that this generation has been somewhat pampered, possibly because of some of the things that Generation X and millennials have gone through. And now with the millennials, they want to make life better. They want to make life better for them. Big booming population of people, 80 million individuals, largest of all generations. And sometimes when we have struggled somewhat as adults, we want to make life better for our children, don't we? And really that's kind of the spirit of a parent, is that they always want their children to do better, to exceed greater than they have. And so they try to pave the way, to make things easier, whether it's, maybe you don't have to work as much as you go through your college education as they did. Don't want them to work 2, 3 jobs and all of that. So we hear the terms helicopter parents, those kind of things. And maybe we're not as tough and firm on the discipline, maybe that we experienced, or maybe we look at different ways of parenting and holding these people accountable. Many of these people have come to believe that they're the center of the world. So there's a lot of jokes and innuendos out there about the millennial generation. So if we have millennials here, I want you to counteract some of that stuff and let us know what you're thinking. So this is a generation where they say everyone gets a trophy, a participation trophy. And That's kind of different for the previous generations who believe in you get a trophy if you win, you get a trophy if you work hard, you get recognized, not just because you exist, but because you have achieved and have accomplished. But the parent really have uh, put a great spotlight on their children and gave to them and sacrificed for them. And some of them feel that because of the parents' efforts, that many in this generation feel entitled. Now that's what the research says. I'm just sharing what the research says. But we also know that this is a dynamic generation, a creative generation, and they've experienced a lot of things. This is a generation that's fueling the workforce today. These guys are in management. These guys are making decisions. These guys are entrepreneurs. These guys are making things happen in the workplace, no doubt about it. So let's look at some of the dynamics here. The largest of all generations, the onset of the internet, cell phones and computers, not smartphones, but cell phones. So they really embrace this concept of working with computers and moving into the digital age. But these guys also experienced 9/11, some of them in real time, many of them in real time. They saw the tragedy, they saw the planes smashing into the World Trade Center. Being that I'm embedded in New York City, I had the opportunity to talk to some other people, especially millennials, who was around when 9/11 occurred, and they saw it in real time, they saw it live, and had the opportunity to ask them how that has impacted their lives. And many of them, of course, know exactly where they were, what they were doing, and that experience. So again, those shared experiences tend to make us think alike based on what we have seen and what has occurred during a particular space and time. How about the mass shootings? Millennials have experienced mass shootings in the schools. Columbine, that one really stands out. But there's so many others. And so they had to deal with that. That was their new reality. At any point, horrible things can happen, whether I'm in a shopping mall or a supermarket or in school or place of work. So, so for these millennials, they had to do these practice drills at work. They had to do these practice drills at school. This was the new normal for them, that at any point, some mass tragedy can occur. So that really shaped a lot of their being and who they are as people. We talked a little bit about the mortgage crisis of 2008. And, that's right around the time where many millennials were graduating, looking for jobs, considering this large number of individuals, 80 million entering the workforce. And at the time they're entering the workforce, there is a recession fueled by this mortgage crisis. Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, some of you remember that, the housing market collapse and the severe economic recession. So with these numbers, with this crisis, housing market collapse, decline in the economy, there was great competition. So the millennials are familiar with competing with each other for jobs. These college grads who have aspirations of working in their majors, unfortunately, many of them had to work outside of their major to make ends meet. Many millennials, unfortunately, had to leave home at a much later age due to the job shortage. Many of them into their 30s were home with mom and dad with college degrees and not able to find the job they wanted because of the competition and because of the recession. And many of these guys were also impacted by the pandemic of 2020, which brought forth another dynamic altogether. So a very unique group of people entering the workforce. So let's look at some ways to work with them. How do we connect with millennials based on some of the things that we know about them. Again, I talked about the experience of a person who co-facilitated training with me, and we kind of had to reel him in to a degree and help him understand that we must value the younger generation. That yes, there may be some things that they are not familiar with, but it's not an opening or an opportunity for us to be critical, but to be able to help them and to be able to teach them. Oddly enough, many millennials didn't really start working full-time jobs until they graduated college. You look at the previous generations, many in previous generations, and this is not to say no millennials did, but many in previous generations, they worked small, odd jobs, cut grass, painted houses, picked up trash, worked part-time here or there. That was just a part of who they were in society to make ends meet. Many of the millennials, keeping in mind that the parents worked hard so they didn't have to do a lot of the things the parents did, may not experience full-time jobs until they graduated college. And so boomers or Generation X may have this expectation that they should know a lot of things that they've known, but they don't know these things because they're entering the workplace at entry-level position, full-time job, and this is their first job after college. And so a lot of things they miss. They may not know some of the etiquettes or some of the protocols that we are so familiar with that we think might be common sense or we may think is elementary. It may not be to them. And so these are some things to think about. So sometimes, we have good intentions, with our efforts, but then it might be counterproductive. For instance, there's many Generation Xers and baby boomers, and I use this term affectionately, have a lot of their children on their payroll, meaning they're paying their bills, right up until the time they're 30 years old. Paying their cell phone. Is anybody like that here? Paying their cell phone bill? Paying their car insurance? These kind of things to just make life easier for them. Subsidizing their income, still giving millennials allowances. So because of these things, some of them may feel entitled. And so how do we connect with them? How do we work with them? So for millennials, offer constant feedback. Please give them an opportunity to share ideas because they're brilliant individuals. They have facilitated and they have ushered in an age of the cell phones and computers and understanding technology. And with millennials, we should take advantage of that because they have so much to give in the workplace, a lot of stuff that we don't understand. How about this? I love this idea here, and I've done that. Launch a mutual mentor initiative. That's almost the situation that we looked at the video clip with Ben Whitaker and Jules Austin in The Intern. Now, Ben Whitaker was fascinated with this young millennial, this up-and-coming person who created this multi-million-dollar internet fashion business, really sharp, workaholic, great ideas, moving things forward. He admired that drive, but she also came to admire him because he was steady, he was level-headed, he did things the right way, he was systematic, he was a boomer. And so they were able to mutually benefit. So in the workplace, I would encourage the different generations to mix to a degree and on purpose. If senior leadership should be able to launch these mutual mentor initiatives so people can understand each other better, linking their older colleagues with younger colleagues so they both can add value. So there's a powerful mentoring aspect in this concept of connecting various generations together so they can understand each other. With millennials, communicate the importance of their work. It's not just busy work. What you're offering to the company, to the agency, to the organization is valuable. We want to hear from you. We want you to have a place at the table. We want to give your ideas a shot. These things are very important. Celebrate them, celebrate progress. They're used to that. You know, they're used to being recognized. They're used to being celebrated. That's a part of who they are in general. So when they are moving things forward, when they're doing things, we all benefit from positive reinforcement. But this is something based on some of the dynamics with the millennials that you will all the more inspire them when you recognize the great things that they're doing. Allow yourself to mentor them or to manage them. They're sharp, they're bright, but they can benefit from your wisdom if you are from an older generation, if you're from Generation X, or if you're from the boomers. Interviewing these people, and I ask lots of questions because I've been working with this topic for a while, just asking questions. And one of the things that I'm learning is that they want to be able to go to people. They want to be mentored by people who have paved the way. They want to have healthy, powerful, and productive relationships. They don't want to have to figure everything out by themselves. But the issue is there's obstacles and roadblocks based on stereotypes, based on prejudging each other. But if those obstacles and barriers can be broken, these millennials will love to be mentored. And conversely, boomers and Xers. I talked about these guys who are frustrated, who have shut down, who are just biding their time to retirement because they're frustrated with the direction things have gone, feeling that the younger generation don't value them, don't appreciate them, don't recognize their contributions, don't respect their experience. They want to be recognized and they want to help. But if they feel that that dynamic isn't there, they tend to check out and just kind of bide their time, and I'll just keep my information, and I don't fit in anyway, and they're not going to listen to me. But this mutual mentoring initiative, understanding each other, millennials having that desire to be mentored, the older generation having a desire to share their wisdom and knowledge is a great way to go. Put millennials in charge of technology projects. One of the things I was able to do is take information from millennials when I ran a youth detention center for 16 years. And so there's a certain way I'm used to doing things based on my mentors who tend to be older, and they're not as familiar with some of the technology and different ways we can teach our residents or youth with technology. So I formed a technology committee, and they were practically all millennials. Had them come together. Sometimes we send them out to a restaurant. They will be on the clock and come up with some ideas as to how we can make our groups, our learning groups with the residents more productive, more dynamic, more engaging for our residents. So they recommend smart TVs and a whole lot of really cool things. The intake process, being digitized, things that younger Generation Z was familiar with and they can connect with. So a lot of things I didn't understand or didn't know, but I was smart enough to take the advice and suggestions from these people who had a better understanding of technology than I ever would have. And so it worked out really, really great. It caused our young people to be more engaged in the learning process. And it just made things so much more better in regards to working with this population of people because we weren't outdated. And thanks to the millennials, thanks to their technology, knowledge and experience that they were able to usher us into a new era as it related to working with young people. So they talk about videos, online training, all of these kind of things as learning tools with our population of people that we served. Okay, Generation Z. These are the guys entering the workforce now. Young people, whether they're exiting from college or high school, these are the guys entering the workforce today. The last of the generations that have been identified, 13, 22-year-olds. Some research says 23, 24-year-olds, 59 million of these guys, approximately. Now, they're a real challenge for the older generation, real challenge for the boomers and the Xers to be able to work with this. So what I want you to do with these young guys in their early 20s, if you have any thoughts, any stereotypes that you've heard concerning this group as they're entering the workforce, I would like for you to go ahead and put that in chat, and we'll be able to read off on some of those. And shortly, we're going to give you an opportunity. I know I opened up the floor that if you had comments, now, if we could recognize you, then we would do that. But certainly in just a few more minutes, we'll do a round robin and see if you have any thoughts, if anything stood out in regards to what you have learned, or if you received an aha moment to be able to talk about that a little. So let's talk about Generation Z. This is the latest generation that's coming into the workplace at this particular time. This is Margaret here. Let's talk about Margaret's onboarding experience, because unfortunately, Margaret is having a difficult time connecting with employment. And there may be a reason for that. And so let's get into her story. So Margaret is a recent college graduate who got her first job this summer following graduation. She was excited to show her supervisor her skill set. Unfortunately, Margaret got in her own way. She brought her cell phone to orientation or the onboarding process. And during the onboarding process, she kept checking incoming texts during the training. And of course, this bugged her manager or the training director, who happened to be a Generation Xer, because every time he looked over, she's on her phone. She's checking text messages. In addition, when she was criticized for getting her reports in late, she became defensive. Her emails to her supervisors were emotionally charged, and we know that when we're in our feelings, that's not the best time to send emails, right? Some of us may have experienced that. We were upset about something, whether we had to correct someone or set the record straight or whatever the issue is, and we're in our emotions. We fired off that email, and after we read it, we wish we could have taken it back. So Margaret is new to the workplace. She doesn't have this experience. She's moving off of her emotions. Things happen that she don't like. She fire off those emotionally charged emails because she is defensive. So her emails to her supervisors were emotionally charged. She was often found complaining about policies and practices in meetings. Now she's brand new. She's learning. But she's raising her hand and she's making comments about how things should be done different. And so that caused some issues for her. During the course of any day, she was checking Instagram to catch up with her friends. When her coworkers began to grow distant, her supervisors met with her and asked her if she had any idea why she wasn't connecting with that older population on the job. She just couldn't seem to connect with them, and she had no idea why. After 3 months of working with her on a corrective action plan, unsuccessfully, She was let go before her probationary period ended. Not sure if any of you experience issues similar with the new generation coming in. That cell phone is attached to their hand. Instagram is a part of their life. Snapchat, I have to keep up with my friends, my cronies. That goes into the workplace with me. I haven't figured out yet how to separate the two, my personal life and my work life. And so I don't know if anyone experienced anything similar to Margaret's story. We have a few items in chat. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Okay, we didn't read this one. Someone said one of the millennials at our office suggested we have a pajama day. Okay, pajama day, right? That's a little bit different from casual Friday. It was a joke. Yeah, and consequently, just on another note, I learned that I was getting older, and I do a lot of training, and the generations that I was working with was a younger generation, and at some point I realized that they weren't getting any of my jokes. Talking about the Jetsons, talking about things from yesteryear, some of the activities that I did for my generation just didn't connect with these people. So it's like, am I not funny? Why isn't it that no one's laughing at my joke? Well, Mr. Gentry, we don't, you're referencing things, we have no idea what you're talking about. And so that was kind of funny. So that was my eye-opening experience working with younger generations, is that while I'm not connecting, because I'm talking about things they have no idea about, and I'm making jokes from it. So pajama day, okay, that's pretty cool. If you watch The Intern, you'll find that one of the things Jules did, the owner and founder of that online internet company, she did not have offices, private offices for her employees. They all worked in the open on computers. And that enabled them to connect more, to interact more, and things like that. So they see things different. And because Jules, this sharp CEO, this president, was so progressive, she would ride her bike through the office to get to one place to another quicker. So when they pointed out the founder of the organization, this millennial, to Ben Whitaker, the 70-year-old senior intern, when he's seen her, she's on a bike riding it through the office or through the company. Very interesting. Okay. I guess I can wear my granny gown and see what they show up in. Working with Gen Z, you have to be very patient. They expect a lot from you and very little from themselves. Interesting. Is he reading my chronos? LOL. Someone has to explain that at Q&A time in just a minute. They have to post everything. Their lives are open books, right? They're going to show you the food that they're eating. If they go out, they're going to take a picture of their food, right? Wherever they are, they're going to take a picture to let you know where they are. Any vacations, anything that they're doing. We know the older people do that as well. But yeah, their life is all about, it's very transparent. It's going to snap. It's on, you're going to find it on Instagram. They're going to pose, they're going to model all of that kind of stuff. So as to see, share their life, share their story. Socializing at work and care to make more friends in a form to gain advancement instead of work experience. Ooh, interesting. So all of those things are some things that we are picking up. So how about this right here? Remember when you were in elementary school and you would come back and that would be one of the first assignments your teacher would have you do? Do an assignment on what you did this summer. You talk about your summer experience. Well, it might be a little bit different now, right? So the kids say, if you follow me on Twitter, you know what I did this summer. Ink pens and pencils and writing utensils don't come with the CTRL Alt and delete key. So that can be a little confusing to these kids nowadays. So let's talk a little bit more about, when we think about Margaret in a case study, if you will, that we just shared. Let's consider these 4 bullet points. For many in Generation Z, employment may very well be the first time in their lives that they have spent most of their lives with older adults and not their peers. So you're boring. They're used to their lives. And consider they don't necessarily know how to do a lot of things because they haven't spent a lot of time with older adults. And that's including their parents. Because their lives center around social media. And so we have expectations of them sometimes that they should know, but it might be unrealistic based on their past and how they have grown up. The average adolescent spends 55 hours a week interacting with their peers, much of it digital, and only 16 hours interacting with adults. A full 30% of a young teen's life is spent with no adult supervision. And research shows that teens are much more likely to go to sites such as YouTube, TikTok, and Snapchat to see what their friends are up to than spend time browsing the Library of Congress. That's what Margaret was doing. I mean, she can't go 20 minutes without knowing what her peers are doing, what her friends are doing. She's checking out Snap. She's seeing what they post. She has to. That fuels her. Doesn't matter that she's in an onboarding process. Doesn't matter that she's supposed to be productive on the job, taking care of assignments and tasks. She's on her phone. I hear Generation X, and I hear boomers all the time talking about these new people coming into the jobs, and they're not doing their job because they are glued to their cell phones. That they literally have to ask them to put down the cell phones. And it's like a revelation to them, like, what? Put down your cell phone so you can get some work done. So I want you to consider these 4 bullet points here, that many of these people just haven't spent a significant amount of time with adults to know what's right and what's the proper thing to do in the workplace. So we have to spend time helping them, being patient with them, and teaching them. So here's some points to consider here. A lot of people that they're working with are close to the age that they are. When you talk about, let me put it this way, they're just entering the workforce. And when we're dealing with juvenile justice, in my world, many of the Generation Z guys are working with the population, these guys who have been remanded to these, whether it's a detention center, residential center, it could be a child welfare organization or whatever it is. Because of RTA, the Raise the Age legislation, I trust that you might know something about that when they brought the older guys from the county jails back to the juvenile system. So now we're working with an older population of teenagers. Well, there's not much more of a difference between these Gen Zers and the people that they're supervising. They listen to the same music. They have similar interests. There's not much of a difference between the two of them. This is one of the dynamics that many are experiencing in the world of juvenile justice, is that there's not much of a difference. In fact, much of Generation Z tends to identify more with the residents or the youth than they do, with the Generation Xers, some of the millennials, and if there's any boomers that are left. So smart technology and artificial intelligence provide unlimited information. These guys don't need you as much as previous generations may have, because they have information at their fingertips. So they don't need to come to adults with questions and concerns. They feel that I can Google, I can go to YouTube, that I have all kinds of ways of assessing information without dealing with adults. So they have less reliance on previous generations for information. They know how to research and get their own information. Many of these guys have entrepreneurial ambitions. They have a desire to work for themselves. I was in a conference recently. I was doing a breakout session, and people found it interesting that I said, for a lot of the Generation Z guys, the full-time job, they may be working with you. You think that that's their real job, but to them, that's their side hustle. They have some other things going And they're just working their job to pay the bills. It's not a career. They're not looking at staying into it. They might just be working their job to get the equipment and the infrastructure that they need to build their own entrepreneurial business and move forward with their ambitions. But they have a desire to work for themselves. So keep in mind that if you have some Generation Z guys with you, it very well may be that the job that they're working is the side hustle and not what they're doing at home in their mama's basement or in their apartment with their roommate. That may be their real deal that they're trying to build. That's their bread and butter in their heart. But what they're doing with that, whether it's a 3 to 11, 2 to 10, 9 to 5, whatever shift they're working, that's the side hustle for them. Something to think about. These guys experience pretty traumatic situation with the pandemic, as most of us. But we know the dynamics with these guys. We learned that isolation really impacted them. Suicide rates went up. Just a lot of horrific things occurred because of the pandemic with these guys. They were right smack dab in the center of this thing. Many of them missed a lot of school. You know, especially these guys in inner city communities. Many of the parents, they couldn't afford laptops. They didn't have iPads and tablets and things like that. And they were expected to tutor, their young people when they're working 2 or 3 jobs themselves. And so a lot of these kids just went for a significant period of time without being educated. And so a lot of Generation Z, a good segment of Generation Z took a major hit during the pandemic because of the expectations. And many of them missed out on a lot of education. So the anxiety, bouts of depression, mental health issues dramatically increased with this generation. A great percentage of them have contemplated suicide. Many of them are receiving, and it's a good thing that they are receiving mental health services. And that's a healthy thing when you're being challenged with certain issues. Again, the threat of terrorism, mass shootings, post-pandemic, this is their new normal. And they have learned to accept change because they have seen so much change. They have learned to accept change as a part of their lives. So here we are, big 3 right here: YouTube, Snapchat, and Instagram. Their lives revolve around these things. They don't turn it on and off when they come to the workplace. So how do we best utilize their in-depth knowledge of these mediums on social media? You guys are familiar with social media influencers, YouTubers, these kind of guys. Well, the truth is that if they can carve out a certain niche and they have a certain area of expertise or interest and they are charismatic enough, they can do quite well developing a YouTube camera, purchasing some relatively cheap video equipment and sound equipment, set it up, in a room, in their basement, wherever they are, and have at it. And upload content. The more content they upload, the more views they get, the more successful they can be. YouTube will pay these people based on, I call them RPMs, or the number of views they get. For instance, I'll give you an example. For every 1,000 views that these young people, these entrepreneurs upload on YouTube, they can make anywhere from $10 to $12. It varies based on the content and the area of information that they're uploading. But the big thing is, if they really have a strong niche, they can make significant amount of money with advertisements, sponsorships, licensing content, and merch. And so if you go to YouTube, that's what you see. There's a lot of people uploading content. And some of these people are incredibly successful. Now, they already have the talent. They understand graphics. They understand, the target audience. They have a certain niche, and this is their heart. And so a lot of people, you'll ask these Generation Z guys, what do you want to do for a career? I want to be a YouTuber. I'm a social influencer. And so, it gets to even the crazier stuff, whether it's OnlyFans and some of the more explicit stuff that we don't like to talk about. But a lot of people don't have to have talent. All they have to do is show themselves. And in this society, oh my God, they can make a ton of money just by uploading content and showing themselves off, and doing seductive things. So these people are thinking about ways of making money, Generation Z. They're not interested in a boss telling them what to do. They're not interested in deadlines, time frames of getting things done and projects and working to make someone else prosperous. They're looking at ways to create things. They're looking at ways to establish themselves, to be a great, proud entrepreneur. Right. So, Dad, check my blogs out and you'll know exactly how my day is instead of asking me. How many people are familiar with this? I wonder. I see a smile or two. This is crazy right here. Some of you guys might be familiar with Shannon Sharp and Club Shay Shay. This is a YouTube broadcast that he does. It's a podcast, and a lot of people are doing podcasts. And again, it's based on the number of views you get that will determine what YouTube's going to pay you. But also, if you're getting a lot of views, there's going to be sponsorships and there's going to be advertising, coming your way. And that's more money for you. And if people really like you, you can develop your own line, your merchandise, your bling, shirts or coffee mugs or whatever you want to do. And so people are finding ways to make a ton of money by getting on YouTube and uploading content and connecting with their viewers. That's another thing that they do. They make it a point to be personal and intimate with their viewers. So in this situation right here, this is a very new thing that happened now. Shannon Sharp, Hall of Fame football player, Cat Williams, he's a comedian. Shannon Sharp interviews lots of people, celebrities, sports people, entertainers. But this one particular interview really caused the internet to go crazy. This one interview, now he did an interview about 2.5 hours or so, over 2 hours, where Cat Williams basically aired out every comedian he could think of. And whether it was accurate or not, what he was saying, that's to be determined. But nevertheless, people were very interested in what he had to say. Some of the people, there's Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, there's Kevin Hart, there's a number of different people that he talked about. And part of what Shannon Sharp did was he broke down that 2-hour plus segment into short segments focused on these various individuals that Cat Williams talked about, which created even more content and more viewership. And so when it's all said and done, and I think the numbers are still rising, Shannon Sharp, for this 2-hour podcast, I think it is somewhere estimated that he has made well over $2 million. Think about that. That if you hit pay dirt on a topic and you get tons of views, because he had like 50 million views and it's increasing. Right now, the worth of this piece right here is about $2 million in counting. Now, Generation Z and others are paying close attention to these kind of things. And so all the more it's giving them motivation to develop content, whether it's podcast or, they're presenting on a particular topic. It can be a cooking topic. It can be anything that people are interested in. They're hoping to hit pay dirt. But this is the most recent phenomenon here, where Shannon Sharp and Club Shay Shay on YouTube, on his podcast, received so many viewerships that this country just completely went crazy. And I'm sure outside of this country as well. and it's being played over and over and over and over again. And every time people are viewing it, cha-ching, 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 so that's what the internet and social media influencers and YouTubers can do. And so when you talk about Generation Z, many of them are fixated on these kind of things, and they're not as connected with what's going on a 9-to-5 job, 3 to 11 job, or whatever it may be. So here are some things connecting with Generation Z. Again, they're relationship oriented. So they're not just going to trust you. Their trust has been in Google, so YouTube. They've gotten information that way. So at times you may be second fiddle to that. Encourage them to simplify their lives and remove some of the self-imposed pressure. Many of them do, because they're comparing their lives with their peers. They're comparing their lives with others, and people are putting their best foot forward on social media, and we're looking at our lives saying, we don't have it like that. We should be where they are. And because of that comparison, oftentimes these people fall into that unfortunate downward spiral, emotional downward spiral. Listen to them and affirm their dreams and goals. So it's kind of like, if you can't beat them, join them. They're going to do what they're going to do. So it's always good to support them in their endeavors. So make the best out of the experience with them while you have them with you. Maximize, their productivity and efforts by motivating, encouraging them, and not resisting them. So it's always better to push and not pull. Provide them with a sense of purpose as they perform sometimes small tasks, and give them short-term commitments. You may not have them for long term. So give them short-term commitments that they can keep and put those wins under their belt. Yeah, this was a trip to me because, I'm one of the ones pulling up the rear because I figured I always need some cash in my pocket. A lot of people just carry plastic. You don't have any money on me? No, all I have is plastic. I just have a credit card. To travel the world with a credit card. That was kind of scary when I first learned of that, but I do understand the logic in that. So is it that some of these kids have never seen a $20 bill before? So just some real quick points as we get ready to conclude. This first point talks about 5 generations, but I really focused on 4 generations. Use Archie and Edith Bunker to talk about the greatest generation, or the builder generation, which is the first generation. We focused on baby boomers, Generation X, Millennials, and now Generation Z. So understanding these nuances is essential to accepting one another. And leaders of multiple generations can set the example by helping team members to find ways to clearly communicate with each other. Step out of your comfort zone, ask questions, be willing to put yourself in other people's shoes to get a better understanding of their thought pattern, how they think, and who they are. Okay? So this is just a reflection point, but we're getting ready to conclude. So typically I would have you take some time to just ponder on these 3 points right here. I'm sure all of you have seen certain stereotypes. You've heard people express certain stereotypes in the workplace. Now, if that happened based on what you have here, how could you effectively push back on those stereotypes when it comes to other generations? And what sort of boundaries do you have in place? When a conversation starts going sideways, or a conversation that makes people feel uncomfortable, do you have the wherewithal to be able to step in and to be able to speak, challenge that situation? So I'm a little bit over, and I want to thank you guys so much for your kind attention. And Dr. Mel, I'm going to turn things over to you, but thank you guys very much.
When you're through, they're free to go. And
All
thank
right.
y'all for signing up. I have sent Janet an evaluation, pardon me, Miss Fugler, a evaluation sheet. Please fill it out. You don't have to sign it. Just fill it out. And if Janet, if you would take those and send them to me so that we can evaluate the work we do. So I'd rather have the honest feedback than know who said it. So send it back. Thank you, everybody.